Welcome to America Uncanceled with Mercedes Schlapp. Matt Schlapp is out of town. I can't even keep track of his schedule. He was in Nevada campaigning for Adam Laxalt, who actually has a primary tonight, and I know he's going to be successful. And I got to tell you, when Matt was out there, he kept talking about how not only are the American people mad, but they are really, really pissed off. But I'm so excited to have I'm going to call it like the girl chat. Like, this is so exciting for me to have our next guest on. She is just someone with so much fire and spirit, someone who I admire greatly. Congresswoman Lauren Boebert, thank you so much for being with us today, or with me, I should say, because Schlapp abandoned me today, but you're with me, Lauren, so I'm so glad you're with me today on America Uncanceled.
Yes, Mercy, I am excited for our girl chat today. This is so much better than having Matt on. We'll tell him later. But you and I get to connect about all of these issues that Americans are really concerned about and even looking forward to correcting.
That's right. And I mean, you're co-chair of the Congressional Second Amendment Caucus, communications chair of the House Freedom Caucus. And now you're also coming out with a book on July 12th, the day before Matt and my 20th wedding anniversary, author of My American Life. What is the book about? How can our viewers get a copy of your book?
Yes, I'm so excited about my book, My American Life. It's coming out July 12th. And there's a lot of fake news out there about me and my family. And I've also lived a really incredible life. So I wanted to share things from my perspective and really set the facts straight. My life has been so eventful, from standing in food lines waiting for government cheese to employing many in my own community and serving in Congress. It truly is the American dream, and I hope that it inspires all who read it. My book talks about me working in the gas patch, opening my restaurant, working at McDonald's, and so much more. The book release date is July 12th, but anyone can pre-order today at Walmart.com, Amazon, and any other major bookstore.
So when you were writing the book, Congresswoman, what was your main message? What is the message you want people to know about how you can live this incredible American life?
So I believe that the main message is that the American dream is worth fighting for. The American dream is still here, and this is what I want for my 4 boys. I refuse to allow my 4 boys to be raised in a socialist nation, and that's why I stepped up to serve my country, to make sure that those freedoms still exist when they begin their families. I grew up in a Democrat household, and I understand firsthand that those failed policies really get you in a cycle of poverty that's nearly impossible to break free from. But when I started working at McDonald's at 15 years old, I learned that I could do a better job taking care of myself than government ever had. So I'm a self-taught conservative, and I've had some bumps along the way. But that is what is so great about America and about this dream that we are all pursuing. In this country, you can come from any background and have any upbringing and really live out your very best life.
So you became you grew up in a Democrat household, became a self-taught conservative. Where did that change happen? Like, when did you realize, okay, I am, I can't associate with, or I don't really understand or don't really want to support these Democrat policies. What was that real moment of change for you that you realized, this is where we know that this party of the Republican Party of being part of the conservative movement could really be the best option in terms of achieving the American dream?
Well, I saw with my first paycheck from McDonald's that I was able to have ownership of my life and make my own decisions with the finances that I earned, putting my hand to something and creating wealth. And I saw my parents struggle with that growing up. My mom was in an abusive relationship for most of my childhood. And I saw the struggles that they went through. And I saw that I had control of my future. And when I moved out, I was 17 years old. I moved out about a year later. I started my family, and I never wanted my kids to stand in those bread lines. I never wanted to fill out forms and able to feed my family. And I didn't want that same stress that my mom had for so many years imposed on my family. So I determined to always do what I could to make sure I was able to take care of my family and be self-sufficient. And it was the Republican policies that enabled that. I looked at the lies that the Democrat Party told my mom for so many years, and I just saw how it entrapped her. And there was a better way out.
So let me ask you, because obviously, I mean, Congresswoman, you're seeing what's happening in America. I mean, I know you're doing what Matt and I are doing. We're traveling across the country. We're talking to everyday Americans. They're like, we can't afford this. Inflation's out of control. There's high gas prices. There's high food prices. We're moving in this direction of a possible inflation and a possible recession. So my question to you is, what's the message to those families right now who are struggling? Those families who really are saying, I can't afford to take a vacation. I mean, God only knows that President Joe Biden can take a vacation and be in his beautiful Delaware house on the beach and show up to work at 12:30 p.m. on a Monday. But the average American family is saying, how can I do this? I mean, how can I even support my family?
Right. And most American families are not even considering a vacation. They're wondering how they're going to fill up their vehicle to have enough fuel to get to work each and every day to be able to put food on the table. This is something that is caused by government overspending and these terrible policies that we're all living under. Now, the state of Colorado, we've been under one-party rule from the Democrats for quite some time, but people nationally are now beginning to understand what that looks like when the Democrats are in the majority, and it's their policies that we are living under. They are not benefiting the American people. We have broken supply chains. We have a wide open southern border with a complete invasion taking place. We have 13 of America's best who were left dead in Afghanistan in that horrible surrender to the Taliban. And of course, inflation. I think right now, when looking at the midterms, inflation is the top 3 issues on Americans' minds right now, because everyone feels this when they go to the grocery store, when they fill up their tank of gas, and when they're trying to take care of their children at home. Look at the baby formula shortage. And Nancy Pelosi's response to that was to give $28 million to bureaucrats who couldn't solve the problem when they were given money the last time. So these policies are not benefiting Americans, and they are definitely waking up to this. They are feeling the hurt from these policies and understand that these people do not have their best interests in mind. We need to go back to President Trump's economy, President Trump's policies. Those are the policies that worked. We had a rising GDP. We had a very low inflation, 1.4%, and now it is absolutely skyrocketing. Everyone is feeling the horrible policies that the Democrats have been pushing.
Well, I don't know if Karine Jean-Pierre, the White House press secretary, agrees with you, Congresswoman, because she made some recent comments, which I'd like to play for you, basically saying that, the economy is looking good. So let me play that for you and let me get your reaction to that.
What I'm trying to say to you is that the economy is in a better place than it has been historically. And so we feel here at this administration, and other experts as well, is that we feel that we are in a good position to take on inflation. We are in a good position to really start really working on lowering prices.
Congresswoman, I mean, the White House press secretary, she doesn't agree with us. She's saying the economy is looking good.
Americans know where this terrible inflation is coming from. I don't know exactly what she's referencing, saying that this is a great economy. If she's referencing the highest inflation in my lifetime, or the highest gas prices in American history, or the decline in GDP growth. I don't know which of those she's pointing to, but this is not working well for American citizens. And they understand that the reckless spending in Washington, D.C. is what's causing this inflation. You cannot force people out of work unconstitutionally through medical mandates, through a pandemic, and then allow them to go back to work and call that job creation. That is false. And this is what the Democrat Party is pushing on Americans as a narrative. We just had a hearing today in the House Budget Committee on the American Rescue Plan. And it's interesting, Mercy, we did not have anyone from the executive branch in that hearing room to actually talk about this. Now, Democrats, they know that the economy is failing. And so they put on this sham hearing in the budget committee to say, hey, look at the great and wonderful things that we did with this American Rescue Plan. And I want to remind your viewers, this was the COVID relief bill that was passed through reconciliation last year. That means that they could not slow that down in the Senate with the filibuster. This is a majority vote that passes the reconciliation, which they had with Kamala Harris. And this was $1.9 trillion, Mercy, wow. And only 9% of that $1.9 trillion went to anything COVID health related. We had sanctuaries for animals in there. We had 800 room resort hotels. We had pickleball. All of these things. And I even asked one of the members, one of the people that they had in there to testify how great this bill was, what those things had in common. He's like, I don't know. Those things aren't in my district. Wow. Well, your people in your community are paying that right now. And this was in the American Rescue Plan. And I just want to say, if bills in Congress, if the language in bills in Congress actually matched the title, I would probably vote yes a whole lot more. But they love to, it's a con game that Nancy Pelosi plays. She titles it something extraordinary, but then loads it with this liberal BS.
No, that's a great point. And one of her best lines is always like, well, you know, just, you don't have to read the bill type of thing. Like, just let us take care of it. Like, trust us. And the reality is that they can't be trusted. I mean, they have failed the American people time and time again when it comes to every single issue from foreign to domestic policy. You tweeted out that 6,000 illegal aliens are marching towards our southern border. Border Patrol will be told to let most of them in. Joe Biden and Kamala couldn't be happier. I mean, what is your message to the border czar, who obviously has failed in her responsibilities?
Well, I think she's had plenty of time to find out what the root cause of immigration is, and especially this illegal immigration. But she would certainly need to go down to the border and see that firsthand to make a true assessment. I've been down to the border 3 times. I've talked to our Border Patrol agents who feel defeated each and every day. They go home demoralized, feeling that they did not accomplish the duty they swore to keep our country safe, to keep the community safe. When I ask them what they need from us, they say, well, we don't need resources right now. We don't need more personnel. We don't even need the infrastructure right now. We just need the policy that allows us to do our job. Joe Biden canceled President Trump's border policies on day one. He canceled construction of the border wall on day one. And that's not saving Americans any money. We're still spending, I think it's $5 million a day for a wall that is not being built. And so 3 million people have come into our country illegally. Some 700,000 of those are illegal, are gotaways. And so these are the criminal aliens. We're talking terrorists that are coming through our nation's border. And they get a cell phone when they come through. They wanted to give them $450,000 checks when they came through. And they certainly get a bus ticket or a plane ticket to fly anywhere in America that they say they know someone. Chain migration taking place in our country. And if they come to states like Colorado, well, they get benefits granted to them by the taxpayer's dime when they arrive. It is shameful and immoral to signal to these people to cross this journey in the hands of the cartel and come into our country illegally, and then we will take care of them with our hard-earned tax dollars. The southern border needs to be secure.
Let me ask you, because obviously you've been working on this issue of fentanyl. We've seen so many deaths occur, these tragedies, these overdoses of especially these young people who, obviously have been impacted by this fentanyl crisis. I got to tell you, Joe Biden doesn't even, these Democrats don't even talk about fentanyl. And I remember there was a time during the Trump administration where we were working hand in hand with the Democrats to really highlight this issue of the fentanyl being brought over through our border, where we were honing in on trying to stop the fentanyl from coming into so many communities. What are you working on to make sure that we're able to stop the fentanyl entering into the United States, especially through the southern border?
Well, first of all, Mercy, Democrats want to deflect and talk about anything that really isn't top of mind for American citizens. They want to talk about the SCOTUS opinion leak, that decision there with Roe v. Wade. They want to talk about restricting Americans' gun rights. They want to talk about anything except for the policies that are actually impacting American citizens. Now, we all know the seriousness of fentanyl and the crisis that it is. Fentanyl is the #1 cause of death for Americans ages 18 to 45, and it's not slowing down. In 2021, enough fentanyl crossed the southern border to kill every single American 7 times over. Fentanyl is absolutely a weapon of mass destruction, and it's killing everyday American citizens. And that is why I introduced the Fentanyl is a WMD Act to classify this as a weapon of mass destruction. It's so sad how much of an issue this opioid has become. We know that law enforcement officers are struggling to keep their communities safe, and many people know someone who has died from this drug. Take my home state of Colorado. In 2019, there were 222 deaths. In 2020, there were 540. And now in 21, there were more than 900 fentanyl-related deaths. Moms, dads, sons, daughters, fentanyl doesn't discriminate. And we need to take serious steps to combat this. And I want to be very clear that this legislation is written in such a way that it targets the use of illicit fentanyl. This will not interfere with the legal medical use. Just like Botox is readily accessible, it's a legal medical use tool that doctors use. Praise the Lord, we have that. But it would not hinder the medical use. This bill has received many co-sponsors, and I'm honestly not surprised that it has received such great attention, because everyday Americans would absolutely agree that fentanyl is a weapon of mass destruction because they've seen the carnage.
So I'm glad Botox will not become a weapons of mass destruction. That would be horrible, Congresswoman. But I do have to say, what does it mean if it becomes categorized as a weapon of mass destruction? How is it handled if fentanyl moves in that direction?
Yes, so this would move this into other departments in the federal government rather than just the Department of Homeland Security. I don't think that this is something that Secretary Mayorkas will be able to tackle alone. He can't even secure the southern border. So this just gives further jurisdiction. So we would have a way to tackle this crisis that is killing children in our communities and is now the #1 death of 18 to 45-year-olds. And I do want to mention fentanyl has been used as a WMD in the past.
Who would have ever thought that that would be the case? But I think it's an interesting piece of legislation to look into. Congresswoman, stay with us. We want to talk about January 6th. We're just going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Welcome to CPAC Now, America Uncanceled. And joining me is Congresswoman Lauren Boebert from the great state of Colorado. Congresswoman, thank you for staying with us. I have a lot to talk to you about, so let's jump right into the January 6th hearings. I mean, we've been watching it closely here at CPAC and have really tried hard to push back on, I would say, their very partisan narrative, their efforts to fundraise off of these January 6th hearings. As you've watched these hearings, what have been your analysis thus far?
Well, first of all, Mercy, I haven't watched all of them because I actually have work to do, and I'm not wasting my time on this committee, which is a unselect committee, completely partisan committee. The minority leadership was not allowed to select any Republicans to actually be on this committee. In fact, when they did, Speaker Pelosi removed those members like Jim Banks and Jim Jordan from the committee and put on her own choices who are supposedly Republican. But we've all seen right through that. But obviously, this committee is a complete witch hunt. It's a distraction from all the failed policies that are going to lead to the Republicans taking back the House and hopefully the Senate. Democrats don't want to talk about how gas on January 6th was $2.40. They don't want to talk about how inflation was 1.4% on January 6th, or how our economy was growing on January 6th, not shrinking. Biden's horrible policies and our suffering economy are what the American people want to address. not rehashing January 6th. I'm focused on moving forward and making sure that we close the southern border, curb inflation, get baby formula on the shelves, unleash American energy, and lower the cost of gas. That's what Congress should be focused on right now.
So you had a great tweet on June 13th saying today the House will hold hearings on how to reduce the cost of gasoline, curb inflation, and get baby formula back on the shelves. And then you said, JK, just more January 6 hearings. You know, I do think that there's something to be said about the fact that the Democrats seem to be wanting to desperately change the narrative, hone in on January 6th, and not hone in on these really critical problems that I think are impacting American families. I mean, do you think that in any way these hearings are making an impact or creating a sort of a change of opinion, or is it just simply the witch hunt to ensure that Donald Trump doesn't run again?
I think this committee and these hearings are insulting to Americans who are truly suffering, who have lost their jobs through unconstitutional medical mandates, who are struggling to get to work because they can't afford to put fuel in their vehicle to get to work, who are struggling to feed their families, who are going to the grocery store and seeing empty shelves. These hearings are absolutely insulting to everyday Americans who are just trying to get by. We need to be focused on that right here in Washington, D.C. We need to focus on how to make the American people's lives better, more prosperous, easy, and not focus on January 6th. I don't remember any primetime hearings for the BLM riots, for the Antifa riots that we saw, for the true insurrection that took place with Chaz. I mean, that was, they literally took over city blocks. That was an insurrection. And this is nothing but a sham. If they're going to talk about January 6th, talk about the political prisoners who are still incarcerated. Talk about the easy access that people had to get into the Capitol building. Talk about how unsecure members of Congress were in the House chambers. I was disarmed in the House chambers. I was not unarmed. I was disarmed. Nancy Pelosi does not allow us to have firearms in the House chambers. So I was unable to defend myself if somebody were to come in and start firing. Now, the only shot that was fired was by a Capitol police officer, and Ashley Babbitt lost her life that day. But we also aren't hearing about that. They want to say, oh, no, we've already investigated it. It's fine. No wrongdoing. But there were serious things that we could be talking about with January 6th. But even that is not more important than the crisis at the southern border, than what really happened in Afghanistan and the surrender to terrorists and leaving them $86 billion of military equipment. It is not more important than our empty shelves and broken supply chains and rising inflation. This is the top issue that we need to be focused on.
Yeah, I do think it was interesting that they postponed the hearings today for January 6th. I think they're looking to do this on June the 16th. Do you know why they ended up postponing the hearings? Do we have a reason for that?
I'm sure they're wanting to drum up more attention, but I don't know. Unfortunately, these members who are running this committee, they don't operate on logic, and you cannot debate reality with these people. Whenever this comes up, they exaggerate so much of this. And I mean, look at AOC. Everything goes back to her possibly being raped on January 6th. Why does everything come back to people want to have some sort of sexual encounter with her any time that there's an incident? I don't know what her obsession is with that, but this is what we're hearing from Democrats. So you can't even debate reality, certainly with everyday policies. And I wouldn't expect the same with January 6th.
Okay, you brought up AOC. I'm so glad you brought her up. Let me play this quick clip on her where she waffles on whether she would support Biden in 2024. Take a listen.
And has a vision, and that's something certainly we're all willing to entertain and examine when the time comes.
That's not a yes.
Should he run again? I think that I think it's we'll take a look at it.
Okay.
But right now we need to focus on winning a majority instead of a presidential election.
Congresswoman, I don't know about you, but normally in the political cycle, you support your incumbent candidate. I got to tell you, either AOC is plotting to run or the progressives are kind of like behind a closed door figuring out how they can get rid of Joe Biden. What do you think?
I think it's much more simple than that. I think she's embarrassed of Joe Biden. I would be embarrassed of someone in my party being the leader of the free world in a fake White House set, reading teleprompters all day or attempting to read them. I mean, truly, this is like having a resident in the White House more than having a president. So even AOC is ashamed of the direction the executive branch is going and understands that these policies aren't exactly lining up to help American people. Now, if President Trump came on, or if somebody asked me a question about President Trump running for re-election, I would say absolutely. We need those policies back. We need a leader who projects strength and in turn gets peace throughout the world from that strength. We need his policies back in place. And I would be there to support him 100% of the way. But yeah, like you said, we have AOC just kind of waffling over if Joe Biden should run again. And I am starting to wonder if the R in Joseph R. Biden is for recession.
Oh, that's a good line. That's a really good line. So let me ask you a final question as we enter into these midterm elections. And obviously, we're feeling very optimistic that the Republicans will take the majority in the House and also win the Senate. What do you think are going to be the primary agenda items that the Republican Party will be focused on?
Well, first of all, that depends on if we have the Senate or not, and what we will be able to get through both houses in Congress. And obviously, we don't have control of what happens in that fake White House set at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. So what we really need to do is have congressional oversight. We need to take that authority, take that subpoena power, and have hearings on the southern border, on inflation, and Afghanistan, and the 2020 elections even. We need to be able to have congressional oversight over these things to hold people accountable. I believe that we will begin to see resignations. I certainly want to see impeachments of Secretary Mayorkas, President Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, and Nancy Pelosi can follow them out the dang door. But what I want Americans to understand when they're going to the ballot boxes this November, it doesn't matter what the Democrats say they stand for, who are running for these offices. I'm here in Washington, D.C., and I understand that Democrats work for Nancy Pelosi. So me and my own race, it doesn't matter what promises Democrats say, oh, we're going to tackle inflation and we are going to create jobs. We're going to do all these wonderful things with our energy to become energy independent again. Well, that's a great idea. But here in Washington, D.C., you work for Nancy Pelosi, not the people in your district who elected you. I see it every single day. There are Democrats who actually understand conservative values and want to unleash American energy, who want to secure our border. But when it comes down to it, they will not vote against Nancy Pelosi to accomplish those things. So don't be deceived by the rhetoric that you're going to hear in campaigns. We know what the Democrat Party stands for and what they push when they are in power.
Well, I got to tell you,
and we need to be sure that we turn that around.
I got to tell you, I think Nancy Pelosi's husband should maybe just pay attention to Nancy Pelosi a little bit more because he just gets himself into a lot of trouble lately. But Congresswoman Lauren Boebert, thank you so much for joining us. We love you. You're such a fighter. And we thank you for being so strong, especially during these critical times. And we look forward to seeing you at CPAC in Texas, August 4th through the 7th. So we'll see you there. And we want to thank you all for watching CPAC Now, America Uncanceled. Don't forget to follow us at CPAC, at Mercedes Schlapp, at M. Schlapp. There's a lot of social media activity happening right now. And as you know, make sure you register for CPAC Texas. That's coming August 4th through the 7th. We want to see you there. We've got the best lineup of speakers and can't wait to see you in Dallas, Texas. Thank you so much. God bless and good night.